Did you hear that? This meeting is being recorded. Like we didn't know that before. Hey, how are we today?
Hey,
Let me
good
see.
night,
You are here. Hang on. I knew, I set this up on my PC camera, and then when I get into Zoom, somehow everything gets shorter. There. Because we're going to be up, and we're going to be down today. Today is actually kind of a variation of last week. So welcome to Workout Wednesday. Today we're going to be talking specifically, not so much about the workout, but things that you can do before or after the workout. So one of the big things that this community, there's been a couple of discussions, not on my page, but it's Lipedema Awareness Month. So there's awareness going on everywhere today. And one of the posts that I was looking at, there was a discussion, I think it was Lipedema Warriors in Oz, about lactic acid and how long cardio type exercise is not always ideal for this community for a number of reasons, and kind of that HIIT style, short, intense, mitigating how much lactic acid and even sometimes like weightlifting and those types of activities. So the coolest thing about a vibration machine is you're kind of always doing recovery to a degree. The same reason that this community uses it for lymph and circulation, even just in the most passive way, is the same reason it's such a huge recovery tool. So the reason you'd want to use it as a warm up or a wind down is to kind of just better prepare your body for whatever you're going to do to it next. And I talked a little bit about that in spot treatments there last week. But if you have a tendency to be very sore after you have exercised, doesn't matter what type of exercises sometimes we do, it's just the way your body deals with post exercise. If you find your exercises are compromised due to things like stiff joints or poor flexibility, or maybe you don't feel stable, a lot of people will use the machines as a warm up to gain stability, circulation, all different types of things. So there's the reason you'd want to use it as a warm up or a wind down. It's just simply another spot treatment. So if you are exercising on the machine, doing a routine, maybe you're doing a rebounder, maybe you're doing some aqua size, there's lots of different ways that we are active. Maybe you're just going for a walk. So, 2 to 3 minutes before and after is going to make your activity not only more effective, but hopefully, if I'm right, and I really try to be right lots, it's the kind of individual I am. I have to be right. But I think you'll find, you don't necessarily have to do both. You'll figure out what your recipe and your time allows. But certainly, if you're going to pick one and you present very sore and you have a lot of lactic acid, try and do a couple of minutes recovery after other activities. So if you find you're stiff after the pool or walking around the mall, get home. When you get home, get on the machine for a couple of minutes. If you find range of motion is poor, balance is a reason sometimes, vertigo, those types of things, maybe you should try a minute or two prior. A lot of my kids that I work with on the cerebral palsy pages, parents will get them on it for a minute or two just to make their balance better before they go to school. So it's, again, another example of maybe a short spot treatment. Sometimes a minute or two is for things like balance and stability or flexibility. I had a gal this morning, I don't think she's joining us today, but just touching her toes. And I, honest to God, think I diagnosed her for lipedema over the course of the call. It was the mom, and she struggled with weight and flexibility. And while we were doing a toe touch, she touched her toes. And, that's actually a common thing I do for demos. So if you've never touched your toes before and all of a sudden you do on your machine, or you get a lot closer, many of you have had that experience, and it's a testament to how quickly that flexibility, stability, and those type of things can improve. So today I'm going to go over a couple of options, and then at the end of it, because just like exercise, there's a bazillion ways that you can warm up and recover. Maybe it's stretching, maybe it's massage. Range of motion is a gift in our world. And if you do not have it, we aspire towards it. And a lot of the things I'm coaching in my standing positions is to really help improve that range of motion so that you can get strong and stable to get down and back up. It's never the getting down. It's the getting back up off the ground. That's always the bigger hill to climb. So we want to make sure that you can take advantage of some of these massage positions, but I want you to do them safely. You know, they might look like a good idea, but if you massage yourself and you're stuck on the floor for a half an hour, it's not, you know, you kind of undone everything that we've just done. So, and then at the end of it, after I give you a few options, we're going to do extreme. We're going to start in seated. So we're starting with those that have no game, no mobility, but you still want to warm up a little bit before you head to the store. We're also going to get down on the ground and do some direct massage positions. So a little bit of everything in between, and hopefully something to work towards. I'm going to ditch my flip-flops as I do in every session. I live in flip-flops. I don't know, I could put socks or pantyhose on right now without tearing them. You'll see me shoveling snow in my driveway in flip-flops in the winter. So today, I'm going to make sure you can see, is my head being cut off? Not too bad. Okay, so I am turning, oh, I did turn on. So for today, we're going to start, for those of you that have a chair, if you didn't bring a chair or you're not using a chair, you can just stand and do a light standing warm-up. I just want to get some blood flowing. So this might be, I'm going for a walk, my knee hurts, my arthritis is kicking me in the butt, I feel heavy or sluggish, and we just want to kind of loosen things up before you hit the pavement, if you will. So as I always like to recommend, start with your feet about hip width apart. If you find there's too much action, bring the feet closer and reduce the intensity. We're going to be working at a mid speed, so I kind of want you, if you got a machine with 60, I want you in that 40 to 50 range, the mid to higher end. And we're just going to sit here for probably 30 seconds to a minute. For those of you that have learned through my other videos how to incorporate upper body, I would like to add that on. So a warm-up isn't supposed to be another 10-minute thing. Sometimes it turns out to be. But the more things you can combine into one position, the less things you're going to have to do and the less time you're going to have to spend doing it. These are meant to be, you know, under 2-3 minutes. So get the feet on. If you're comfortable, lock those arms and add the hands to get a little bit of upper body. If you want a bit more action, progress and add the elbows if you're able, and just lean over a little bit more. 30 seconds to a minute, something like this. If you find you want to move around, you know, do a little bit more. Whatever you want to do, whatever you would normally do sitting in your chair, we're just adding a little bit of stimulus with the machine, okay? What I would like you to do, if all you're doing is just adding hands and doing something like this, probably a minute to a minute and a half total time is all you're really going to need for something like this. For those of you that are able to stand or to do a combination and want to do a little bit longer, we would progress to standing. Our feet are still hip width apart. If when you stand, you're finding it's a little more aggressive than you can handle, bring your feet closer to the center. And if you're able to stand, the best warm up, and I know I sound like a broken record, is pelvic tilts. So I want you to tilt your bum forward, backward. We don't look like this. You know, you might not feel like you're moving a whole lot, but you're clenching those butt cheeks and holding them for a second, and then you're tilting them backwards, and you should feel a little arch in that low back, a little stretch. You could do little circles. Just get some looseness going on in that core area, especially if you're doing walking or standing activities. You're standing in front of a till all day on your feet. Get a little bit of range of motion, and this is going to give you a little bit more total body blood flow. Your standing exercises are always going to contribute to a better bone density, strength, those type of things in the long run, because you're bearing more mass than if you're seated in the chair. So from here, the only kind of other thing I do as a warm-up, because I get a lot of tightness in my hamstrings, is I like to sort of lean over into a low back position, and I straighten up my legs almost completely, and you'll feel a little bit of the pull and butt cheeks and just below where those hamstrings connect. But primarily, you're feeling it in the low back. For those of you that spend a lot of time sitting or too much time standing, there's never, you know, the perfect day. But, you know, this is going to just get into the low back. And if you feel like you want to go a little more and turn that into a bit of a stretch, if stability allows, you know, that's kind of all I do. You know, I might do about 3 or 4 reps of this. I stand up, maybe do a couple pelvic tilts, go to my low back. You don't have to stand there and do the same thing. I've taught you guys a few moves now. Mix them up. You'll find once you start using this regularly for the feel-good stuff, the warm-up stuff, you're going to have your 3-4 regular moves that you go to, okay? But sometimes you got to experiment and figure out what works best for you. So as far as a warm-up or recovery, that's all you'd really need. Listen to your body. Before I get into the massage options, for something before or something after your activities, 2 to 3 minutes is probably plenty. If you feel you want to go a little bit longer, that's totally fine. When that stiffness is dissipating, when you feel like things are softening up, you'll find your own time frames. But again, they're really designed to be 2-3 minutes tops, especially if you're doing them before and after. So I'm going to move my stool out of the way to a better location right here. And I'm going to use one of my steps today. So this is just an adjustable aerobic step. Da-da-da. I like something like this versus the ones with the risers because they're not attached. As I said, I deal with a lot of cerebral palsy, and different machines have different heights. This is one, I used to be a company called Revive. That was my studio back in the day. But I think you can get these on Amazon, something similar, for about $40-50. Some machines sell blocks, or maybe some of you have little stools. But what I wanted to show you today, these are great if you lack range of motion. Sometimes that little bit of difference from the floor to the machine is enough to make massage positions challenging. So what I use this for is just to give you a little more surface that's, sort of the same height as the machine to maneuver some of these massage positions without having to use upper body strength, especially if you're lacking. So a lot of my ladies in this group and my men, we tend to have good leg strength. That's our transportation in most cases, but sometimes, if you're having to rely on your arms, the last thing I want is to aggravate frozen shoulders and things like that. So for massage, this is the really hard one. We're going to start with our calves. Now, a lot of you, if you have not tried this or weren't aware this is something that you can do, yes, of course, this is an awesome way to target swelling in the lower extremities. For the calf massage, one little tip, you want to make sure that your heels are just past the machine. If your heels are on the machine, sometimes they can bounce around, but it kind of lifts the calf. You want that whole meaty part on the machine. So just pop the heels just past so that your feet are hanging freely. If you have a tendency to be tight in the calves while you're sitting here and getting a massage, pull those toes towards you and stretch them. Point them. Stretch the tops, the shins. You can do something like this. If you're fairly flexible now and this is easy, well then make the calf stretch harder for you. Reach for them. Reach for the toes. If you can't reach your toes, use one of your little bands and pull yourself towards them. But hold this for about 3-4 seconds and release. Another 3-4 seconds and release. It's just another way to do it, especially if you've got the ability to get down on the ground, but the stability's not there. Sometimes standing on the machine and touching your toes is kind of scary. So this is just another way that you can do it. Today, I also wanted to very briefly, I've done this in other sessions. This is a highly technical piece of equipment. This is a cool pool noodle, the bigger size. There's 2 sizes, and I cut them with like a big steak knife, a serrated knife. One of the issues I've noticed a lot is knees, bad knees, good knees. I have bad knees. Many of you happen to have lumps of pockets and things under the backs of your knees. So from your calf massage, just a variation, take this pool noodle and wedge it under the back of your knees. So you might need, depending on the length of your calves, you want to make sure that the pool noodle's on the machine. The back of your knees, the Achilles tendon, the arches of the feet, the nape of the neck, there's certain body parts that doesn't matter how you position yourself, they're not going to come directly in contact. So what I like to put the pool noodle in for is you're just going to feel it pushes the stimulation up into the joint. It's a really good thing to do for swelling. And from here, if you do have joint issues with the knees or they're weak and you want to start exercising them, you can actually turn this into a leg lift where you lift and you hold those for 2 to 3 seconds. That same thing I was doing to stretch, by adding the pool noodle becomes a bit more of a strength activity. So that's just a variation. If you have swelling in the outer edges of the knees, this takes a little bit of hands, but you can roll. So you're kind of getting the outside, just position your body a little bit differently and just sort of roll. Your feet are kind of turning to turn your calves. And if you really have upper body strength, if you've ever done any rolling, you can actually roll on these machines. So but the main reason I use the pool noodle instead of your vibrating rollers or your hard rollers, the density of them is much more than the pool noodle. So when you incorporate the vibration, they kind of just bounce all over the place and it's not really as comfortable. This has got a little bit more give. It kind of cradles into the curves of your body. And depending on you, the smaller ones are a little bit nicer for in around the ankles if you're playing with your wrists. The bigger one is nicer for bigger body parts in the back of the knees. The other thing that you can do, you can wedge this under the front of your knees, like this. So if your swelling's a little bit more under the kneecap, that's where mine is, my pain is anyways, you can just kneel on the pool noodle to get the stimulation kind of up through the front of the knee. That's just a variation. That one wasn't a planned one, that was a bonus. So the next one, since you're already down here on the ground, let's get into the hamstrings. So the way I do my massages is there's kind of a flow, so you don't have to minimize the amount of maneuvering that you're doing since you're already down here. So we start with the calves. Try to have your buttons between your legs facing this way. So depending on how your machine is set up, if your butt hits the buttons, depending on the machine you're using, it might speed it up, it might turn it up. So you try to have your buttons on this part of the machine if you're doing this kind of massage. And so from here, we're going to shimmy up. Oh, sorry. Again, depending on how long your legs are, my butt cheeks are hanging off the back of the machine. You could use this little stool if you wanted, just for something to lean back onto. With your butt off the machine, your spine is not, you're not going to feel it in your head at all because your spine's very not in contact with the machine. If you move a little more forward and get the glutes on, if I do this, I can't do my bum and the thighs at the same time. I got to do them in 2 rounds. But you'll feel as soon as those hips land on the machine and the tailbone, you'll notice a little bit more motion through the upper body. It's not harmful, and it's really something I'd like you guys to get used to because there's a lot of benefit to getting this area worked, but it does take some getting used to. So just lean forward slightly if you find it's a little bit too much action. And a variation I always love to show on this one, while you're down here on the ground, again, the more things we can combine, the better. How to add upper body. We're going to take one hand, we're going to tuck it right under the bottom of that butt cheek, kind of at the top of the thigh, and other side. Now, in most cases, our arms are longer than our torsos, so at this point, it's pretty much impossible to lock your arms. So your elbows are bent, and you're going to feel movement, and you can probably see it in my arms a little bit more. You can arch back, arch forward, whatever kind of feels good. But this is just a passive way to get a little bit more direct movement without having to do something like a push-up. So this is more of a total body warm-up. It's moving that lymph. Be great if you are starting to incorporate some upper body activities. This is a lazy way that you can warm the upper body up while you're sitting down doing the hamstrings and everywhere else. And the very last one I wanted to show you, depending on your range of motion, I'm going to lay down here and I'm going to show you how to do my low back. Many of you deal with low back fatigue and weakness or core issues. In the standing position where I was leaning over, this is a way that you can do the machine if the low back, if you have the range of motion. You're going to scooch forward and you're going to lay down. And this one's nice to have a block. You can hold yourself up, but it's not lazy that way. It's almost work. So lay down on this, and you got that just sort of above the muffin top, that roll on the back, and the hips. And you can turn your hips from side to side. You know, you can wiggle around. Maybe your back fatigue isn't right in the small of the back. Maybe it's off to the left on the top of the hip a bit, or maybe it's on this side. So if range of motion allows, my guys love this one, but it's lazier if you've got something to prop your upper body on, even if it's a couple of pillows. Depends on how high your machine is off the ground. If you want a little bit more action, a little bit more mass, put some legs up. Okay? You can stretch and touch. Do whatever feels like you want to do, okay? So I talked a little longer than I would normally do that, but that's a really good way. If you do have a lot of swelling, you don't want to do any more squats or pelvic tilts because Debbie does them all the time. This is something to work towards. And how the massage kind of started back in the day, when these machines became a little bit infamous, was more cellulite applications. There's a study out there, I think, that's been published about how vibration machines reduce cellulite. Well, you're massaging your skin in any of these positions. And even though typically I only recommend below the waist, there's a lot of things people don't ask me for permission on. I got women laying down, doing the backs of the arms. I'll put my back on it. It's not harmful, but it takes tolerance to learn that head shake thing. But what the skin tone thing happens, because we're massaging below the waist, the skin is an organ. So you will tend to see overall effects. Varies for everyone. If you do have some lymphomas or some tough spots that hurt when they're on the machine, you may want to add a mat for some of these. So for the calf massage, the hand massage, the back, if you need to add some yoga mat or something to your machine for those lymphomas, that's a good idea. If you have massage guns, you could even target them a little bit before you got on the machine. So that's just some direct applications. I've done massage sessions on everything, but massage is also a really good way to loosen things up, warm those muscles up. If you tend to be dizzy and are just getting started and find after you've laid down on the ground you're a little bit lightheaded or stiff from maneuvering yourself around, feel free to stand back on it for a minute or two at the end and maybe do another 30 seconds, a minute, just to kind of finish the process. But I showed you more than enough ideas. I'm certainly not suggesting you do them all, but I'll give you an example with the massage on the legs. When I first started doing that, of course, my studio was flooded with women. But what I really started getting busy with was guys coming from the gym after leg day. They don't want to work out on this. Most men, how do I put this thing? It's a vibrator. They're intimidated, right? This thing can't be, it can't do more than weights. And, guys have a different impression of this equipment than we do. And, but I'll tell you, once they hit about 45, 50, that pain that they have the next day that they used to brag about, they don't need to hurt anymore. I don't need to hurt anymore. You don't need to suffer the next day to know that you've done something. So what a lot of my guys would do is just, come do that as a quick warm up before the gym. Oxygenates the blood, raises the body temperature, and minimizes injury to a degree, but they'd come after to get rid of the pain because the leftovers sucked. I'm going to get my glasses and I'm going to open up the floor now to a couple of questions. So yes, a little bit of a variation on spot treatments from last week, but spot treatments is very general. If you were doing a warm up or a recovery session at the gym, it wouldn't be longer than your workout. So, these are things just to think about. And if your warm up turns into a workout, that's okay too. One of the big things a lot of folks find, especially my guys, again, when they are exercising and they're doing their squats, one of the things I used to find back in the day is they'd actually complain that they weren't sore the next day because, that's what you're supposed to feel if you did the work. So, because of that ability, they weren't doing stretches or they were just doing the exercises. So even just doing your exercises on this environment versus the floor, because of the nature of the technology, you're kind of doing a little bit of recovery just by doing those exercises. So if you are pushing yourself and you're working hard with technique, using weights, and you're not super sore the next day, it's not because you didn't work hard enough. That's kind of the reason people like using these machines. So I just wanted to touch on that point because a lot of people expect that it should hurt the next day because you're doing squats for the first time in 10 years. You should feel like you did something, but it shouldn't be debilitating where you can't get up off the toilet the next morning. So I have Sherry, Cynthia, and Mira here today, aka Blaze. Does anybody have any warm-up or recovery related questions and things? It could be maybe something that you're dealing with as a deficiency and what's a good warm-up before I do my exercises that I'm supposed to be doing, things like that. Any questions you guys have today? You don't have to be shy. If you do have questions, I automatically mute you upon entry, so you'll have to unmute yourself, Cynthia and Sherry, if you did have questions. And if not, I might put Mira on the hotspot. Oh, Cynthia, this was my first time in one of your sessions. Love the, oh, if you've got the range of motion, Cynthia, like you could do that back one really whenever you need. I would suggest hopping to the beginning of the page and looking at, there's two starting videos. There's one that's standing, and then there's one that's all seated. Just to get over some, some of the lessons, I kind of talk terms and a few things that may not be common nature to you yet. So Cynthia, what machine are you working with? I'm curious.
I have the LifePro waiver.
Oh, nice. Okay. A very
Waiver.
common machine in a lot of my videos. And I'm assuming you have lipedema.
I do.
And
Yeah.
what kind of made you decide to take the plunge on the machines? Is it something you'd been looking at a while, or something that you learned recently?
I'd say fairly recently from the Facebook groups.
Okay.
But I've had my machine since about December. So I've had it for about 6 months now. I use it every day.
Awesome. Awesome. And were you just doing standing type things? Were you doing other exercises?
I exercise on it. I do calf raises, squats,
Nice.
Tricep dips. I work out a lot. So this is my third routine of the day.
So vibration machines, that if you have exercised in any discipline in the past, you assimilate to them a little bit better, because what's hard about the exercise, yeah, obviously the exercise is work and fatiguing, but it's technique. There's a lot of ways to do variations on squats, but if you're not doing them properly and your form isn't there, I don't want to say you can cause issues, but you want to get the most benefit out of what you're doing. So if you've been doing those exercises for a long time, it's very easy to translate to the machine. It's just understanding, what speed might be comfortable, and hand placements and things like that. Good for you, Cynthia. The whole purpose of this page is, when I first started, or one of the main reasons, was there are a lot of people using these machines, but they struggle with what to do, or how often, or how long. So I'm kind of that naggy accountability piece where, I post every Monday, what have you been doing and where have you been doing it? Just, to sort of get it out of the box or the closet. So if you've been using it faithfully for 6 months, you're probably in the habit, and you probably notice if you're not using it regularly. Sometimes if you take a break from it for a week or two, you sometimes realize some of the soft stuff that it's been doing for you too.
Yeah, I feel like it's made me stronger.
Okay. Anywhere in particular?
Almost without realizing. My legs are very strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very strong for my age. I'm 63. Good. And I'm strong as the 30-year-olds.
Is there any deficiencies in particular you're trying to target?
My calves are weak.
Okay.
I'm really trying to strengthen my calves. I do have swelling, so this helps reduce swelling.
Particularly in the calves?
Swelling mostly in my thighs.
Okay.
And
have you done some of these type of positions before, the massage stuff in particular? Yes,
I've done the one where I put my calves, lay down and put my calves on, and my thighs on. But I've never done that back one. That was oh my gosh.
So I'll tell you what, Cynthia, and not to scare everybody else if you don't have the range of motion, I'll show you, if you've been doing the calf stuff for a while, there is a way to pick up the calf massage. I'll just show you. So for this version, you don't want the block, and this is only for the calf massage, okay? And lay yourself down on the ground in that same position. You're gonna lay all the way down, but while you're doing it, lift your bum up like you're doing a bridge, and you'll put more body weight into those calves, and you'll feel it gets a little bit deeper. And for your calf raises, are you trying to build like strength or mass? Like, are you trying to build some definition?
Yes.
What about
both?
Weight?
Really
Stable enough to add some weight?
I am.
I wouldn't, and I'm not talking ridiculous amounts, but if you're that stable, a good investment might be a weight vest. What I like about a weight vest, you don't have to hang on to it, and you can do like all your stuff with the weight vest on. So when you're doing your tricep dips, you're adding a little bit more weight. But for the calf position, If you're not super stable and you're doing your calf raises with both feet, I recommend 1 foot at a time, especially if your machine's lighter. I don't want you flipping it. But when you add weight, sometimes it's hard to rise up on those calves and hang on to weights and not have something to hang on to. So your hands are free. So that's just a suggestion. And one-legged calf raises is another way to do it. So you're just using your own body weight and you're transferring it all to one leg, and just hold still as a variation. So the calf raise is kind of one of those positions where it depends on your stability. Last thing I want is anybody rolling an ankle. But if you're doing those type of things now, probably a little mass it's going to fatigue you a little bit quicker, but it'll help with some of the definition. Adding weight isn't about becoming a bodybuilder. You got to add a lot of weight, a lot of technique over years to train those type of bodies. So depending on whether there's been issues with your diagnosis that suggests against that. But I have a lot of women working with kettlebells and weights, and it's simply to add, fatigue faster, but also a little bit on the definition piece. I think you'll find that improved. And if there's constant swelling in the calves, sometimes the definition is there, but we're not always seeing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and I can see it in the morning before I really start swelling, and then by the end of the evening, I have no calves.
So, do you do massage later in the day, or do you do your stuff usually earlier on?
I do the in the evening.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, if you're not doing the massage is the easy one to do because it's the end of your day and it feels so good. But one of the downsides of massage is it's the number one thing people will overdo. Right? You're down there. What's 10 minutes when it feels good, right? So sometimes over exercise presents in the form of swelling. So just make sure there's a balance. And I usually recommend for massage, maybe 1 to 2 minutes per body part. But what I would recommend is mixing up your speed that you're using every week. So if this week you're doing all your stuff at, 45, change it within those ranges, maybe jump to 50 and drop to 40. And it's another way to kind of trick the body to not getting too used to any one speed without having to change up the positions a lot.
Okay, that's a great idea, because I've been staying on the same speed. Like, I worked up to 30 and I haven't moved beyond 30.
What I would do, Cynthia, is bring the feet closer, which is also another modification where your body goes, well, wait a minute, what? So bring them a little bit closer, and you'll find, especially for your calf raises, it'll help with the stability. If you're too wide, and I would say with your calf raises, keep them under your hips, hip width apart, be functional. And in your calf raises, instead of just coming up, try coming deeper in that squat. And I already feel my calf cramping from this morning, but try coming, do you know what I mean? So try adding a little squat in those calf raises, if stability's there. You can Google, there's a bazillion options, but if you're already doing that kind of thing on the machine, it's probably just a matter of, picking things up a little bit. It sounds like you've got it handled. And hello, Miss Wilsons. I see her coming from the car. How about Miss Sherry? Do you have any questions, Sherry? You don't have to. I'm just asking. And I'm so bad about missing messages, so if anybody typed me, feel free to let me know.